Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we're going to start looking at Aether Revolt, which is the second set in the original Kaladesh block. We're going to look at the first Planeswalker deck in that set, which is Ajani Valiant Protector, which is white and green deck. So let's look at the deck list. So we've got 21 creatures, 6 sorceries, 5 enchantments, 4 artifacts, 1 instant, 1 Planeswalker obviously, and 22 lands, which is actually quite low for pre-constructed decks. Normally they sort of have 24, 25 lands. So yeah, only got 22, and it's like not a particularly low mana curve. So that's actually a little bit odd in my opinion. But anyway, that's I'm looking at it. So let's look at the face card. Big old lion man himself, Ajani. So he is 4 green and white for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. The fact he only comes in with 4 loyalty is actually like not wonderful in my opinion. But anyway, let's look at his abilities. So it's green white. So +1/+1 counters are in that kind of that comfort blanket of green white kind of shared design. So his +2 is to put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature. He's got a +1 to reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order, in a random order. That's actually pretty good. Dig until you find a creature. That's actually, I think, pretty good. And then his ultimate, his -11, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is your life total. That creature gains trample turn to turn. Ajani normally is associated with life gain, and we've obviously got like an ability here that stacks well with with gaining life, keeping your life total high. There's actually not too much life gain in the deck, so I'm not actually I'm not sure how useful that ultimate actually is. I mean, it's very expensive. It takes a lot of time to get there. Like we're looking at what it comes in with 4 loyalty, immediately go up to 6, then 8, then 10, then 12, and then pop it. So you're looking at sort of like 4 or 5 turns, I think, before he can actually pop that ultimate. So, like, presuming you get him down turn 6, you're looking at like turn 11 to actually pop. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think as with most of these kind of intro deck, these Planeswalker deck Planeswalkers, I think it's usually like the plus abilities that actually make them more useful. But anyway, I think Ajani's okay. And then his sort of signature cards. So we've got 2 Ajani's Aid. This is the search for him. So 2 green and white. So it's actually one of the cheaper search spells, mostly because it doesn't really do that much. So it's an enchantment, which makes it weird. Most of these are normally like sorceries or instants. So it ends the battlefield. You may search your library or graveyard for Ajani Valiant Protector, reveal it, put it into your hand. Then if you search your library, shuffle. And then you can sacrifice Ajani's Aid to prevent all combat damage a creature of your choice would deal this turn. So has such a minor effect. It's just damage prevention on one creature, and it's only combat damage. So very kind of limited what it does. It's 2 colors as well, which doesn't really help too much. But it's fine. It's fine. Actually, no, it's not fine. It's actually pretty weak in terms of like these search spells. I suppose it's cheap, but then it doesn't really matter when Ajani himself is 6 mana to cast anyway. So yeah, so a little disappointing there. So then the buddy card is 3 Ajani's Comrade, so 1 and a green for a 2/2 with Trample, which is like fine. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control Ajani Planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Comrade. I think this is better than most of the usual buddies, because at least it's it's already got Trample built in. If it if it didn't have Trample, like it only got Trample if you had Ajani, I think that would be pretty bad. At least this is going to benefit from the other effects you've got in the deck that like dole out +1/+1 counters. Like Inspiring Roar, so this 3 and a white sorcery, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. That is very expensive for that effect. It being at sorcery speed and this expensive. This is actually pretty bad, I think. Just for a single +1/+1 counter. Yeah, it's on every creature you control, but like don't have a huge number of creatures in the deck. So we had like it was 21, I think. 21. Yeah, I just think Inspiring Roar is like not great. There's like definitely, there's definitely better cards in the deck that do exactly this effect plus more. Yeah, it's just you'd expect this effect to really be sort of like maybe like 3 mana or something, or be at instant speed. So yeah, that's really not great. So kind of a little disappointing Ajani's signature cards. Let's get into the rest of the deck, which is still mostly focused around +1/+1 counters. Thankfully, these get a lot better. So we've got 2 Armorcraft Judges, so 3 and a green for 3/3. When it ends the battlefield, you draw a card for every creature you control with a +1/+1 counter, which is bonkers. I actually love that. If you think back to the Khans of Tarkir decks when we had like all the Abzan stuff, which had all these Outlast and bolster mechanics and stuff. This card would go so well. This is like an instant home run in any deck that it wants +1/+1 counters on creatures. This is so good. I feel like even if this draws like one card, that's 4 mana for a 3/3 that draws a card when it enters the battlefield. That's okay. I mean, yeah, that's fairly solid. But then if you draw like I think 2 or more cards of this, I think it's so good. I think for only 4 mana, and it's also still a 3/3. So really solid inclusion here. Actually surprised it's uncommon and not rare, because I say you can potentially get so much card draw off it. And they've got a single Ridge Scale Tusker. This is one of the cards I was talking about, like when compared to like the Inspiring Roar. So it's 3 and double green for a 5/5. So like perfectly fine like stats anyway. And then when it ends the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So it's not fair because it's comparing an uncommon to a common, but for 1 extra mana, and admittedly in a different color as well. So probably an even more unfair comparison. But for 1 extra mana, you're getting a 5/5 and exactly the same effect. It's just seems a bit silly to me. I think it just highlights just Inspiring Roar is very, very underwhelming. But yeah, this is really good. And then you could a lovely play would be doing this and then next turn Armorcraft Judge to draw a bunch of cards. That'd be great. But yeah, Rescale Tusker's really good. Really wish there was more than one in the deck. Then we've got 2 Verdant Automaton, just 2 mana for a 1/2 artifact creature. You can spend 3 in a green to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Yep, just a mana sink, just to keep growing and get stronger. Yep, that's perfectly fine, I think. Right, so then we get into the sort of the actual the sub theme of the deck really, which is these cards with Revolt. So let's look at Lifecraft Cavalry. So 4 in a green for a 4/4 with Trample, which is fine. Has this Revolt ability. So it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, and that is the Revolt trigger. So Revolt it mostly shows up on green and white, but it is probably more famous for showing up on Fatal Push, which was like a really good removal spell at the time and was super popular in Modern, I think, because it was a really efficient kill spell, and the Revolt is not a difficult kind of condition to meet. And that made like Fatal Push even more efficient because it could kill off potentially a lot of like really threatening creatures like in the meta at the time for only like a single black mana. It's really good. Revolt, it doesn't matter how the creature left the battlefield, like if it died or it gets returned to your hand or anything like that. As long as a permanent has left the battlefield, or you sacrifice it as well, that's another one, then you get the Revolt trigger. So this is okay because then there's potentially 5 mana for a 6/6 trample, which is okay. And again, there's like, I suppose, maybe there is this kind of skill test of like, do you hold on to it and hope you can hit the Revolt trigger, or do you just cast it and like make do with what you've got, and like the Revolt creatures I think are costed okay if you cast them without the Revolt trigger, and if you do get the Revolt trigger, then you get like a really like pretty good deal for their mana cost, I think. So I think it's like a pretty fun little mechanic, I think. Yeah. So we've got 2 Narman Renegades, 1 green for a 1/2 with Death Touch. See, that's like perfectly fine for like 1 green mana. And if Revolt goes off, he comes in with a +1/+1 counter. So, I mean, 1 green mana for a 2/3 with Death Touch is amazing, but you'd be fine paying a single green for a 1/2 with Death Touch, wouldn't you? That'd be absolutely fine. So yeah, that's fine. So one of the rares in the deck is Solemn Recruit. So 1 and double white for a 2/2 with double strike, and has Revolt at the beginning of your own step. If a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, gets a +1/+1 counter. So as long as stuff keeps leaving the battlefield, this is going to keep getting counters and keep getting better because it's got double strikes. So it's going to become a real nightmare to deal with. So yeah, I quite like this. Then a bunch of Revolt stuff that doesn't really care about +1/+1 counters, but they still have useful effects. So 3 in double white for the airdrop Aeronauts. So they're 4/3 of flying, and the Revolt trigger is when they enter the battlefield, you get 5 life. So that's I think that's the one life gain card in this deck to synergize with Ajani's ultimate. I say there's really not that much life gain in here, but they're a big flyer. Again, you'd be fine, I think, paying 5 mana for like a 4/3 flyer. That's basically air elemental stats, and if you get the Revolt trigger, extra 5 life is obviously quite nice. We've got Deadeye Harpooner, 2 and a white for a 2/2. Its Revolt trigger is when it enters the battlefield, if a opponent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, destroy a tapped creature an opponent controls. So yeah, this is actually one of the rare ones where you don't want to cast it with because it's like it's just 2 and a white for a 2/2, which is like way below curve for this time in the sort of like the game's history. So this is kind of one where it's like a bit mandatory, like you have to really get the revolt trigger to get like the worth out of this. I mean, if you need a 2/2, you can cast it, but it's going to feel so bad just having just a 2/2 with no abilities for 3 mana. Yeah, so this is one where you've got to kind of hit that revolt trigger to make it worth, I think. And then 2 Silkweaver Elite, 2 and a green for a 2/2 with reach. Revolt is if the permanent you control left the battlefield, you when it comes into play, you draw a card. So yeah, that's fine. Like 3 mana for a 2/2 with reach and draw a card. That's okay. Sure. And then a bunch of stuff without without Revolt. These last 2 creatures to fill the space. So 3 Audacious Infiltrator, 1 white for a 3/1, can't be blocked by artifact creatures. That's pretty good. And if you were playing this, these Planeswalker decks against each other, if this was going up against the Tezzeret deck, which is the next one we'll look at, yeah, this guy would be pretty good. He's pretty much unblockable for a vast majority of the deck. So yeah, it's okay. Good thing to put +1/+1 counters on. And then a single Girapa Guide, 2 and a green for a 3/2. You pent 2 and a green, type creature you control, can't be blocked this turn by creatures with power 2 or less. That's pretty good, just stops small chump blockers getting in the way of creatures. That's okay. So go on to non-creature spells. So the other end deck is, or the other non-Planeswalker signature rare whatever, is Aid from the Cowl. So 3 and double green for an enchantment. So it does nothing unless you get the Revolt trigger at the beginning of your end step. So Revolt, at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent, you may put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it on the bottom of your library. So it's nice that it's May. It's like it's not you have to put it onto battlefield or you have to like tuck it away if it's a instant or sorcery that you want to keep there. That's okay. It is annoying that you have to kind of jump through this hoop every time to get it to trigger. But obviously the payoff is pretty good. Just getting stuff onto getting into play for free is okay. So yeah, I think this is fine. So I don't think there's really the tools in this deck though to reliably trigger Revolt, because basically you're relying on your creatures dying, because you haven't really got any sacrifice outlets, you haven't got any self bounce, and there was quite a lot of self bounce in Aether Revolt because it was to tie in with the the Revolt ability. Anyway. So we've got a single engineered might. So 3 a green and a white, sorcery speed. Choose one. Type creature gets +5/+5 against trample until turn, or all your creatures get +2/+2 and gain vigilance until turn. This is okay. I think that second mode, the board wide +2/+2 and vigilance, is better. The first is okay, but I feel like it's a little overcosted. I like at 5 mana. Sorcery speed, like single target pump, is generally not. I personally don't like it as much because it lacks the whole surprise thing of mid combat. Like you turn a block into like an unfavorable situation for your opponent, that kind of thing. This way, like they see it coming, I suppose, but like it's like a big enough boost and it gives trample, so I suppose. But I think the second mode is better personally. A single natural obsolescence, 1 and a green for instant. Put an artifact on the bottom of its own library. This is okay. Only one of them is a little bit annoying because I always find it really weird when they like put just one copy of these kind of utility cards in here. But generally, I think tucking something on the bottom of the library is generally better than destroying it because obviously every color sort of has a way of, apart from red really I suppose, but most colors have a way of getting stuff from the graveyard back. So if you tuck it on the library, it's basically out of the game. So this is okay. A single Prey Upon, lovely Prey Upon, 1 green mana, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. You've got a lot of things in here that get +1/+1 counters or can be bumped up. So yeah, this could be okay. This is like your one removal spell. And then randomly Daredevil Dragster. Like sure, okay, we'll have this here I suppose. It's 3 mana artifact, it's a vehicle. So at the end of combat, if Daredevil Dragster attacked or blocked this combat, put a velocity counter on it. Then, if it has 2 or more velocity counters on it, sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. So you get 2 uses out of it. It's got crew 2, and like pretty much every creature in the deck can crew this and turn it into a 4/4, which is okay. I suppose this is like a revolt trigger because it sacrifices itself. If it survives and like you get the velocity counters, and the fact it replaces itself with some card draw is okay, but just feels like a very, very weird inclusion in the deck. I think it's fine, but like I think it was definitely better. They've got 2 Unbridled Growth, 1 green mana for an aura that goes on a land. Enchanted land has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and you can sacrifice Unbridled Growth for free to draw a card. So this is okay. I suppose at the very least you could. This is 1 green at sorcery speed just to draw a card if you really wanted to. But yeah, it could help like just bounce your cards a little bit, and then it is nice that it has this. If when you don't need it anymore, you can just sack it, draw a card. I think that's okay. And then 3 Renegade maps. This is again. Oh, I suppose this is another way to trigger Revolt. Actually, thinking about it. So 1 mana artifact ends the battlefield tapped. You can tap it, sacrifice it, set your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So yeah, actually, there we go. That's a way of sort of triggering Revolt. You've only got 3 of them though, I suppose. But yeah, it's okay. It's a sort of a cheap way of doing it. So yeah, that's okay, and it's like helps you with your land. As say, you don't have as much land in this deck as these precons normally do, so maybe this goes a little way to alleviating it. I don't know. And then 4 Tranquil Expanse, which is just a basic green-white dual land, ends play tapped. And then 9 plains and 9 forests. So let's quickly talk about what could have been. So I think it's all right, it's okay. But I think there was definitely some of these were much better choices that should have been in the deck personally. So let's talk about Fairgrounds Trumpeter first. So 2 and a green for a 2/2. At the beginning of each end step, if a +1/+1 counter is placed on a permanent under your control this turn, the Fairgrounds Trumpeter also gets a +1/+1 counter. So this just feeds off your other things that are getting +1/+1 counters. I think that would have been pretty good. Alley Evasion definitely I think should have been here. So this helps trigger Revolt. So it's 1 white mana, instant speed. Choose one. You either give a creature you control +1/+2 turn, so it's a usual buff, or return a creature you control to owner's hand. So dodge removal, help triggers the Revolt of other things you can cast. So yeah, I think should have had like 2 or 3 of these in here. And also Scrounging Bandar. So 1 and a green for a 0/0 comes in with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you move any number of +1/+1 counters from Scrounging Bandar onto another type creature. So again, that would be kind of nice, like if you've got these, effects that are putting +1/+1 counters on all your things, like from the Ridge Tusker thing. This can shift its counters around to something that needs it. Admittedly, it's only at the beginning of upkeep, but it's free to do it. So that could have found some space in here, I think. So yeah. But yeah, I'd like to know what people think about this deck. If you got any thoughts or stories or comments or opinions about the deck, if you had this one, let me know. Stick a comment below. What do you think of like the Revolt ability? Are you bored with green-white doing +1/+1 counters again? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Stick a comment below. But I'll be back next time. Go look at the second Aether Revolt Planeswalker deck. So until then, thanks for watching and listening, and have a great day.